Chapter 91. There they are. Stop them. The Red Lion Knights who followed Abel drew their swords and blocked the way. If they were delayed here, the special forces and even Abel would come after them. Zeke shouted to Boris, when I clear the way, take the prince and get out of here. Zeke put the prince on Boris's horse. As Boris rode out of the hotel, Zeke drew his sword, whong. Elemental power surged into Zeke's sword. He concentrated the power of wind, whoosh. A huge storm erupted around Zeke and he swung his storm sword towards the Red Lion Knights, crash. The knights couldn't see anything due to the fierce gust of wind. Boris, carrying Karuz, took this opportunity and dashed forward along the path Zeke had opened with the wind. Zeke followed, swinging his sword at the bewildered Red Lion Knights, bang. The knights, struck by Zeke's sword imbued with strength, were sent flying, kayak. Zeke took out the deep breath of the flame giant potion from his inventory, whoosh. As soon as he threw the potion, white flames erupted from it, creating a huge wall of fire in front of the hotel. The knights were bewildered and stumbled about, unable to cross the wall of fire. Damn it. Unleash your aura blades. The blue knights gathered at the front and tried to control the flames with their aura blades. However, the deep breath of the flame giant, an ancient potion, wouldn't be extinguished so easily. The knights hesitated, unable to advance further. As the flames seemed to char their entire bodies if they got too close, that was when it happened, whoosh. Abel suddenly leaped into the air towards the flames. At the same time, he swung his sword at the deep breath of the flame giant, crash. The wall of flames split apart as if a waterfall was being divided. Abel stood in front of the split wall of fire and shouted to the knights, divide the Red Lion Knights into two groups. One group will come with me to the terminal and the harbor. The other group will chase after the attackers with the special forces. Thud, thud, thud. Zeke and Boris dashed into the forest, evading their pursuers. When the glamorous cityscape was no longer visible, Zeke asked Boris, is there a way to cross directly to the central continent from here? Boris shook his head at the question. It's difficult to find a route that goes straight while avoiding Abel Draker and the Imperial Special Forces. Are there any other routes? Boris pondered and slowly spoke. There are two. The first is to go north of the kingdom, cross the Central Sea, and detour to the northern continent. However, this method requires going along the coast, which has a high risk of being discovered by the enemy. What's the other method? Going south of the kingdom through the forest of monsters and crossing the Sea of Death to reach the southern continent. From the southern continent, we can take a portal to the central continent. However, this method has the threat of monsters. We'll go south. Zeke chose to enter the forest of monsters without hesitation. He judged that it was better to deal with monsters than knights. Boris let out a low groan and nodded, okay. He turned his horse and guided Zeke towards the forest of monsters. Karuz, sitting behind Boris, was pale and silent. Zeke approached Karuz and handed him a potion. Drink this, it will warm you up a bit. Karuz took the potion Zeke offered with trembling hands and drank it all at once. After drinking the health recovery potion, Karuz's face regained some color. I feel much better than before, thank you, Sir Zeke. Zeke was surprised by Karuz's words. How did you know I was Zeke Draker? Karuz caught his breath and said, I never forget what I've seen once. Your voice and unique accent can't be hidden even if you try. Did he willingly follow me because he knew I was Zeke Draker? He thought Karuz was just a dissolute prince, but it seemed that wasn't entirely the case. Zeke said to Karuz, Your Highness is in a very dangerous situation. Karuz nodded at Zeke's words. Indeed, if Julius and Abel are both targeting me, I must consider the entire central continent my enemy. Zeke shook his head at those words. That's not necessarily true. If you go to Midland and enter Callie Draker's territory, your safety can be guaranteed. Callie Draker, the Silver Knight. You say, is she helping me? Callie Draker is the one who sent me here. If it's the Silver Knight, I can trust her, Sir Zeke. Can you take me there safely? Zeke nodded. I'll do my best. It will be difficult for you, Your Highness, but you must follow my instructions carefully. Just then, something caught Zeke's senses. Take His Highness and stand back. I'll take the front. Zeke stepped forward with his sword drawn. At that moment, something fell from the tree. Kahak! A monster that looked like a giant flying squirrel lunged at Zeke. Zeke swung his sword and cut down the flying squirrel. You have slain a creature corrupted by magic. You have earned 10 karma points. As Zeke expected, he earned karma points for defeating the monster. Good. I can earn some points here. Boris said to Zeke, "Boss, we can't go further in on horseback from here." As Boris said, Zeke dismounted and decided to walk into the forest. Kairak. The deeper they went into the forest, the more monsters attacked. Zeke deflected all the monsters that lunged from the trees with his sword and headed deeper into the forest. It was a distance that would take at least 2 days to walk, so it was important to conserve their stamina. Zeke took out the food and water he had stored in his inventory and shared them with Boris and Karuz, while he endured by devouring the dead monsters with gluttony. Just then, an ominous sound echoed through the forest. Kayawayak. A flock of sinister-looking birds circled above the forest, letting out screams that sounded like tearing cries. "The atmosphere of the forest has changed," Boris replied. "It seems the pursuers have followed us into the forest." It seemed the knights were rummaging through the forest noisily to find Karuz. Boris's expression worsened as he finished speaking. "Boss, we need to get through the forest quickly. If the master of the swamp appears, we'll be in big trouble." Master of the swamp? At that moment, a huge roar was heard from deep within the forest. Goo! The entire forest seemed to shake with just the roar. Boris's face turned pale. That's the master of the swamp. The Dortons never go deep into the forest of monsters for fear of incurring the wrath of the master of the swamp. Judging from Boris's reaction, it seemed to be no ordinary monster. Zeke nodded. "Boris, take His Highness and go further in first. I'll lure the pursuers elsewhere." "Okay. What are you doing?" Lo Siemens, one of the lieutenants of the Red Lion Knights, said to the Special Forces agent in a chilling voice. The agent replied to Lo, "I told you it's dangerous to go through this forest. It's better to take a detour." Lo said to the agent, "And if they get there first and escape on a smuggling ship, will the Special Forces take responsibility?" The agent couldn't answer Lo's question. He said sharply to the Special Forces agent, "If you don't want to report to the consul that you lost Karuz, we need to chase after them quickly." The Special Forces agents gritted their teeth at Lo's words and looked for a way to enter the forest of monsters, since this incident occurred before they could hand Karuz over to Abel's side. The responsibility still lay with the Empire. Because of this, even though the Red Lion Knights were acting arrogantly, the Special Forces agents had no choice but to follow their lead. Damn it, of all places, the Forest of Monsters. The Forest of Monsters wasn't as well known as the Forest of the Forgotten in the Central Continent, but it was just as dangerous. As an intelligence agency, the intelligence agency conducted research on the area before carrying out missions, so they knew very well how dangerous the Forest of Monsters was. Unlike the Special Forces agents who were moving cautiously, the Red Lion Knights, led by Lo, were rummaging through the forest recklessly. The Special Forces agents were worried that the master of the swamp might awaken, but they couldn't stop the Red Lion Knights. Just then, monsters appeared in front of the pursuing group. Roar! It was a huge monster that looked like a bear, but it was definitely not a bear. "It's a devil bear. Scatter and engage." The Special Forces agents tried to keep their distance and deal with the devil bear, however. The Red Lion Knights drew their swords without hesitation and plunged them into the devil bear's body. The devil bear collapsed instantly. Seeing this, the Special Forces captain broke out in a cold sweat. To deal with the devil bear so easily. The Draker Knights are truly fearsome. They continued deeper into the forest, defeating monsters along the way, and then, at some point, "Goo!" A roaring sound was heard from afar. The Special Forces captain's face turned pale. "Damn it, the master of the swamp has awakened," Lo asked the captain. "To be so frightened by a mere beast, it's a shame to the Special Forces' reputation." Lo ignored the Special Forces captain's warning and went deeper inside. But strangely, the further they went in, the fewer monsters attacked. The Special Forces captain felt something was amiss. There's no way the forest could be this quiet. Just then, one of the knights touched an installed scroll. Crash. The explosion scroll detonated, sending vibrations throughout the forest. Lo was startled and shouted to the knights, "Prepare for an ambush!" Hidden in the smoke, Zeke held a dagger and cut the knight's ankles. Kayak! The knights, caught off guard, were helpless against Zeke's attack. Lo shouted, Fall back and secure your vision. But it was too late. Zeke's sword was faster. His sword cut through the necks of the knights. Lo gritted his teeth and unleashed his aura blade. Zeke threw a strength-imbued dagger at Lo. Clang. Lo deflected the heavy dagger, but he didn't stop and charge towards Zeke. Zeke unleashed the water chapter towards Lo. Elemental sword water chapter wave sword. Zeke's sword strike, surging like a tsunami, deflected Lo's sword, created a huge shockwave, and pushed Lo back. Crash. Lo, pushed back, crashed into a tree. The forest was swept away by the shockwave. Cough! Lo coughed up blood from the huge impact and couldn't regain his balance. The Special Forces agents, who were keeping their distance behind, threw chains at Zeke. Clank! The Special Forces agents, successfully binding Zeke's arms and legs with chains, tried to restrict his movement by pulling him from all directions. However, as Zeke clad his body in strength, they could no longer restrain him with the chains. On the contrary, when Zeke pulled on the chains, the Special Forces agents were almost dragged along. Ugh! What power! Just as Zeke quickly subdued all the Red Lion Knights and Special Forces agents. Suddenly, the forest floor became strange sizzle. The solid ground turned into a swamp. The Special Forces captain shouted in surprise, "Climb up the trees now!" The Special Forces agents, realizing what was happening, quickly regained their composure and climbed up the trees. But the Red Lion Knights couldn't. Most of them floundered and fell straight into the swamp. Help me! The knights who fell into the churning swamp tried to escape using their aura. But it was no use. The more they struggled, the stronger the swamp sucked them in. In the end, all the knights who couldn't climb the trees disappeared into the swamp. Lo, leaning against a tree, regained his senses and barely managed to climb up a nearby tree. Seeing his subordinates all fall into the swamp, he broke out in a cold sweat. What is this? The Special Forces captain gritted his teeth and shouted, "The damned master of the swamp has appeared. We need to get out of here now." Thump, thump, thump. The sound of something huge approaching was heard from deep within the forest. Chapter 92. What is that? Zeke also looked at the creature appearing from beyond the forest, standing on a tree. A giant monster, as if molded from filthy mud and sewage, revealed itself. Sizzle. The trees that came into contact with the bodily fluids flowing from the monster melted, emitting smoke. The area around the monster turned into a bubbling swamp. The swamp sucked in all moving creatures. Zeke observed the monster with his dragon eye, a corrupted ancient dragonkin completely eroded by magic. A corrupted ancient dragonkin? Like the Hydra he encountered in Kaiser's resting place, the master of the swamp also seemed to be one of the dragonkin corrupted by magic. The master of the swamp raised its head and opened its mouth wide towards those on the trees. Ka-ia. Suddenly, a sticky liquid splashed out from the beast's mouth. Splash. The Special Forces agents, who were on high alert, jumped to other trees to avoid the liquid that splashed from the beast's mouth. However, the knights, who had been relieved to climb the trees and failed to avoid the liquid in time, were drenched in it. Sizzle. Kaiwayak. The knights who were covered in the acidic liquid screamed as their bodies melted away. Even the Draker Knights' uniforms, which effectively blocked physical and magical attacks, were useless against the beast's acidic liquid. Lo, who luckily avoided the acidic liquid, broke out in a cold sweat and moved to another tree. Huff, huff. But the beast was relentless. Suddenly, the beast's back wriggled and tentacles covered in sticky bodily fluids emerged. Splash. Dozens of tentacles sprang out and wrapped around the Special Forces agents and knights on the trees. Kayak. The bodily fluids on the tentacles were also acidic as the entangled bodies began to melt and the beast's back split open, swallowing the knights and agents wrapped in its tentacles. Lo, on the tree, wielded his sword and cut down the tentacles that sprang out from the beast. Ha! The tentacles were cut down by Lo's aura blade as he was a blue knight. However, he couldn't maintain the aura blade indefinitely. A tentacle, sneaking in from his blind spot, swiftly snatched Lo's arm. Ugh. Lo managed to swing his sword and cut off the tentacle once again. However, the acidic solution on the tentacle melted half of his arm. He cut off his increasingly melting arm with his sword. Huff, huff. Lo's face turned pale as he severed his own left arm. I need to escape from here somehow. There was no time to think about knightly honor or anything like that. Facing the master of the swamp, Lo felt a tremendous sense of despair, as if he were facing an irresistible force of nature. Lo concentrated aura in his legs and leaped from tree to tree. The tentacles chased after the quickly escaping Lo just as he was about to completely escape the beast's territory, deflecting the tentacles with his sword. Splash. Acidic solution sprayed like black rain from the sky. No. Lo, hit by the solution, couldn't dodge and his whole body melted. The tentacles grabbed the half-melted Lo and dragged him away. Lo disappeared into the beast's body. Gutu. The beast roared even louder, shaking the entire forest. Zeke, using his concealment skill, observed the movements of the beast's tentacles and analyzed its attack range. This is incredible. Dozens of tentacles stretched out in all directions. They moved freely and sprayed acidic solution, making even a graze fatal. Seeing the acidic solution penetrate his dragon scale armor and slowly recover even with his healing factor, Zeke made a serious expression. Now I understand why it's called the Master of the Swamp. It was unbelievable that in Draca's era they fought dragons with power even greater than this dragonkin. However, if he ran away now and the monster chasing him caught Karuz, all his efforts would be in vain. He discarded the sword corroded by the beast's acidic liquid and took out Bahamut from his inventory. Then he activated Hersian. Clank. Hersian covered his entire body. Since the Special Forces and the Red Lion Knights were already annihilated, there was no reason to hide it anymore. With Bahamut, which had the indestructible attribute, and Hersian, made from the divine metal orichalcum, he could withstand the acidic liquid. Wong. Holding Bahamut and equipped with Hersian, Zeke summoned Bucephalus. Bucephalus. Let's go. As he climbed on its back, Bucephalus leaped into the air. Splash. The beast's tentacles persistently chased after Zeke and Bucephalus, who were moving freely in the air. It's difficult to find an opportunity to attack because of those damn tentacles. That was when it happened. Nay. As if reading Zeke's mind, Bucephalus suddenly changed direction and charged towards the tentacles. Then, it started generating lightning from the horn on its head. Crackle. Suddenly, powerful lightning poured out from Bucephalus's horn. Zap. White streaks of lightning struck the tentacles. Tiss. The tentacles hit by the lightning burned black and turned to Ashkaria. The beast writhed in pain. Zeke was surprised by the powerful lightning that Bucephalus generated. Wow, Bucephalus, you're the Dragon King? You're amazing. Bucephalus freely leaped through the air, showering the approaching tentacles with lightning zap. The tentacles burned by the lightning fell to the ground with a thud. Zeke grinned. Good, Bucephalus. Keep blocking the tentacles. I'll launch a big one. Zeke stood on Bucephalus's back and raised his sword. High up. As Zeke gathered energy into his sword, an aura blade over 3 meters long appeared. He jumped off Bucephalus's back and swung his sword towards the beast. True Dragon Sword Art Secret Technique. Dual Junction Form Giant Dragon / one of the secret techniques of the True Dragon Sword Art, which could cut through the body of a giant dragon. Zeke's aura blade / the beast's back / the beast, struck by Zeke's attack, twisted its body and opened its mouth wide. Karia. At the same time, black acidic liquid was shot towards Zeke, who was in midair. Zeke used the wind chapter to change direction in midair. Here comes another big one. Then, he gathered the power of fire into his sword. Wung. The power of fire gathered in Zeke's sword. The gathered flames turned blue. Zeke swung the burning flame sword towards the beast. Elemental Sword Fire Chapter Blue Flame Dance. Dozens of blue flame swords poured out from Zeke's sword and pierced the beast's body. Karia. Black smoke rose as the flame swords burned its body, and the beast screamed in pain. Then, tentacles poured out from its entire body. Splash. Hundreds of tentacles covered in strong acidic solution flew towards Zeke. Splash. The tentacles wrapped around Zeke's body, which was equipped with Hersian. Then, several messages popped up. External erosion and attack attempt detected. Automatically activating available defense magic among activable magic circles. Supplying mana through Dragon Heart connected to the system. Activating 6th circle magic, Plasma Field. Wung. Purple and blue plasma emanated from Hersian's SSS. All the tentacles that came into contact with the plasma lost their form and disappeared. Turning to ash, hundreds of tentacles were scattered in an instant. Zeke was surprised to see the plasma emanating from Hersian. They said it has an archmagic circle engraved on it, and it automatically activates 6th circle magic. A battle mage who could activate 6th circle magic without chanting during battle had to be at least 7th circle. Considering that the current master of the magic tower was 8th circle, the power of this Hersian was truly tremendous. The beast, hit by the plasma field, roared in pain. Soon, the effect of the magic ended, and Zeke, who was floating in the air, began to fall. Bucephalus! Bucephalus circled in the air and caught Zeke as if scooping him up. Goo! The master of the swamp stretched its neck out and roared even louder. The entire forest shook. The forest shook quietly as if the hidden monsters were terrified and hiding deeper. That was when it happened. A strange sound came from the beast. Cursed. Dragon Slayer. Hate. It seemed to be speaking through vibrations. Zeke realized that this sound was the language of the Chronos era that Kaiser had mentioned before. The system automatically translated the beast's language. It knows. About dragon slayers? Could it be a dragonkin that survived from the Dragon Slayer era? Seeing that it could speak, it seemed to be no ordinary dragonkin. Perhaps it was a real dragon corrupted by magic. I didn't expect there to be a dragon still alive. It would be nice if we could communicate, but it doesn't seem like the situation allows for that. That was when it happened. Kaaria. The beast roared and raised its upper body. Then, something suddenly sprouted from its back. Splash. A pair of wings emerged from its back. The sticky, mud-like organism also wriggled on the wings. The beast flapped its wings. Whoosh. The sticky organic matter started splattering everywhere. Sizzle. The corrupted organic matter contaminated not only the trees and grass but also the ground. Bucephalus dashed through the air, dodging all the decaying matter that the beast sprayed. At the same time, it shot lightning towards the beast. Zap! White streaks of lightning struck the beast's body directly. The beast opened its mouth wide and spewed black poison smoke towards Bucephalus. Crash. Poison smoke, far more threatening than the acidic liquid, filled the air. Bucephalus flew higher to avoid the poison smoke, detected deadly poison emitted by the ancient dragonkin. The S armor automatically purifies the deadly poison. Surprisingly, Hersian also had the function of automatically purifying poison. The more I see it, the more amazing it is. He thought that if he didn't have this Hersian, it would have been much more difficult to deal with the master of the swamp. Zeke stroked Bucephalus's mane and said, "Bucephalus, burn that guy with lightning." Nay. As if responding to Zeke's words, lightning surged from Bucephalus's horn again. Zap. Dozens of streaks of lightning pierced the rampaging beast's body. At the same time, Zeke took the stance of the Dragon Slayer art with his sword drawn. A giant aura blade sword with majestic power. Heir. Zeke jumped off Bucephalus's back and charged straight towards the beast, whose movements were halted by the lightning. Then, he swung Bahamut, imbued with the aura blade Dragon Slayer art. True dragon sword art. Dragon head beheading. Crash. Zeke's sword cleanly beheaded the beast. Splash. The beast's head fell onto the swampy ground. The head slowly sank into the swamp. At the same time, the severed area wriggled, and like the Hydra, a new head started to regenerate. It seemed that the swamp on the ground was connected to the beast. Zeke realized that beheading it was useless. Since it's a dragonkin, I have to destroy its core, the dragon heart. Zeke activated the wind chapter, leaped into the air, climbed onto Bucephalus's back, and circled in the air again. This was his chance, while the beast hadn't fully regenerated its head and regained its senses. I'll aim accurately and finish it in one blow. Zeke aimed his sword at the beast's heart. Wung. Bahamut roared fiercely as power concentrated within it. As the heart of Bahamut, located in Zeke's ether hall, moved, light emanated from the pattern engraved on his chest. Zeke gripped his sword and assumed the starting stance of the Dragon Slayer art. Aura swirled and gathered in Bahamut. Crash. The Dragon Slayer art that Zeke unleashed contained the secrets of the true dragon sword art. passed down by the Sword Saint Saturn Draker. As the inheritor of the Sword Saint, Zeke revived the true form of the Dragon Slayer art in this era rumble. A storm of aura erupted around Zeke's sword, Heir. Zeke powerfully thrust his sword from Bucephalus's back. Dragon Slayer art. True dragon sword art, dragon heart thrust pieing, like a giant lance piercing the heart of a dragon. Zeke's sword strike accurately pierced the beast's heart. Chapter 93. Crash. The spear of aura that Zeke thrust accurately pierced the beast's heart. The beast, whose head had almost completely regenerated, was about to regain consciousness when it let out a long roar in pain as its core was pierced. Goo. A hole was blown through where its heart was. The wings that had sprouted from the beast's back melted away and disappeared. Karia. The beast let out a death rattle, staggered, and collapsed on the ground. Zeke, watching the beast from Bucephalus's back, cautiously descended. Attacking the core was the right answer. At the same time, a message popped up before Zeke's eyes. The skill level of True Dragon Sword Art S has increased from beginner to skilled. The True Dragon Sword Art left by Saturn Draker was a secret technique designed to relentlessly target a dragon's vital points. On the other hand, the Dragon Slayer art currently taught by the Drakers was modified for battles against humans, not dragons. After Terrakin Draker, many clans created their own secret techniques and applied forms based on the Dragon Slayer art, leaving the original form only as the basic Dragon Slayer art. As the Drakers and their Blood Alliance clans focused on the modified applied forms and secret techniques, they considered the basic Dragon Slayer art as merely an introductory swordsmanship technique. However, while learning Saturn Draker's True Dragon Sword art, Zeke realized that the true essence of the Dragon Slayer art lay within the basic Dragon Slayer art. The sword forms and techniques were important, but the core of the true Dragon Sword art was how to combine and utilize aura with those techniques and how to link each form. Zeke was able to grasp the essence of the true Dragon Sword art through the battle with the Master of the Swamp. I clearly understand the meaning of the true Dragon Sword art, which is to slay dragons. As the beast collapsed, the area that had completely turned into a swamp was slowly returning to its original form. Zeke rode Bucephalus and landed on the ground. Then, he approached the fallen beast. It wasn't completely dead yet, as the mud-like substance on its skin was still wriggling slightly. That was when it happened. The mud-like skin slid down, revealing the beast's eye that had been covered. The eye was similar in shape to Bahamut's, which Zeke had seen in the video of Saturn Draker. In the past, is it really a dragon? At that moment, something was transmitted to Zeke's mind. Dragon Slayer? Thank you? Unlike before, when its words were cut off with a groan, its intentions were clearly conveyed. This time Zeke was bewildered by the beast's words of gratitude. Thank you? What do you mean? And, are you a dragon? But why are you in this form? As Zeke poured out his questions, the beast closed its eyes, seemingly taking its last breath. The mud-like organic matter covered the beast's face again, and the traces of the dragon-like eyes could no longer be found. Zeke looked at the dead Master of the Swamp. It felt different from the other monsters he had caught in both his past and present lives. A dragon thanking a dragon slayer, and Bahamut, known as the Evil Dragon, being Terrakin Draker's contracted dragon. It seems there's something unknown going on. The records about Terrakin Draker were also restricted by the Draker clan. The Draker clan held many secrets, including the unknown legend of the Dragon Slayer. If I take control of the clan, all these secrets will be revealed as well. Zeke pondered what to do with the corpse of the dead monster, or perhaps dragon, and decided to absorb it with gluttony. He couldn't be sure of its true identity, but it was definitely a dragonkin, so he judged that he could gain a lot from devouring it. But will I be okay after devouring this? There hadn't been any problems so far, so he thought it would be fine. But he couldn't help but feel uneasy remembering that the beast had sprayed not only acidic solution but also poison. Well, it'll be fine, come on, good skills. Zeke used gluttony on the Master of the Swamp. Sizzle. Zeke's shadow spread widely and engulfed the beast. Soon, the beast's body was absorbed into Zeke's shadow. Perhaps because it was so large, it took quite a while to absorb. Finally, The shadow of gluttony swallowed the entire beast. At the same time, a message window popped up. You have devoured a corrupted dragonkin completely eroded by magic. Your consumed stamina, mental strength, and mana are restored. You have devoured a designated creature, and as a reward, the skill level of gluttony has increased. As the gluttony skill grows, you can devour items and acquire abilities. You have acquired the ability Decay from the devoured creature. By absorbing the Dragonkin's dragon heart, the seal on Bahamut's heart has been partially released. The current compression seal level is 80. You have earned 1,000 karma points. You have acquired 3 random boxes. Oh, when he devoured the Hydra, he only absorbed 1 head and gained the immunity to all poison's constitution. But after absorbing the entire ancient dragonkin, the rewards were tremendous. Zeke was surprised to see one of the messages that popped up. I can devour items too? He wanted to test out this function, but considering the situation, he decided to try it later. I gained an ability, a large amount of points, my true dragon sword art skill level increased, and I even got random boxes. It was tough, but I gained a lot. With a satisfied expression, Zeke climbed onto Bucephalus's back. Then, he quickly ran towards Boris and Prince Karuz. Your Highness, this way. Boris led the prince and hid deeper into the forest. Perhaps because of the master of the swamp. No other monsters were in sight, however. This also meant that the pursuers could chase them without being hindered by the monsters. Ugh! Boris gritted his teeth as his wound reopened. He tore his clothes to stop the bleeding and caught his breath. The Special Forces agents were relentlessly chasing after Karuz. Damn it! Even though this was where I used to work, they're really persistent. The Special Forces, who had split from Lowe's group, were chasing them deep into the forest of monsters. Boris was also a special agent from Division 13 of the Intelligence Agency and a Blue Knight, but he was no match for the Special Forces agents while carrying Karuz. Can I hold out until the boss arrives? His new boss, Zeke, was a truly monstrous person, so he believed that if Zeke came, they would definitely be able to escape this place. Just then, one of the Special Forces agents approached where Boris was hiding. I don't know who you are, but you're quite skilled. Even we had a hard time. The Special Forces agent began to persuade him. You won't be able to escape this place with the prince anyway. I'll make you an offer. Hand over the prince, and I'll guarantee your life. Boris knew better than anyone that the Special Forces agent's words were a lie. They wouldn't let him go after he learned about the Empire's secrets. He held his sword and cautiously observed his surroundings. They'll surely say that and then stab me in the back. Boris drank the potion Zeke had given him and took out a scroll from his pocket. He didn't have many left, as he had used them several times to escape pursuit. I wonder how long I can hold out with this. Just then, the Special Forces agent shouted again. I'm not lying. I'll really guarantee your life. Boris was about to throw the smoke scroll and escape, but that was when it happened. I'll go. Let this person go. Unexpectedly, Karuz stood up first and tried to go towards the Special Forces. Boris was surprised. Your Highness, what are you doing? Karuz said with a bitter expression. You've done enough, I'll surrender, so you escape from here alive. Karuz had naively fallen for the Special Forces' persuasion. That was when it happened. Whoosh! The Special Forces agents from behind rushed in and immediately subdued Boris and Karuz. We've secured Prince Karuz. The Special Forces agent who was trying to persuade them grinned. Thud! Suddenly, a dagger was plunged into the agent's temple. He collapsed without even screaming. The Special Forces agents who had subdued Karuz and Boris were startled. There's an enemy hiding. Be on guard. Thud! Before he could finish his sentence, daggers were plunged into the necks of 2 Special Forces agents. Boris got up and grabbed Karuz. Get up! We have to escape from here. Karuz, with a bewildered expression, ran after Boris. The Special Forces chased after them again. But something jumped out from the forest and blocked the Special Forces. Whoosh! Zeke, with his sword drawn, confronted the charging Special Forces agents. Wung! A shield automatically unfolded from his armor. deflecting all the attacks of the Special Forces agents. NOW. Before he could even finish saying, "No way," the Special Forces agent's head was severed. After dealing with all the Special Forces agents, Zeke chased after Boris. Boris and Karuz looked relieved as Zeke caught up with them. "Boss, Boris, how long will it take to reach the smuggling ship? We have to cross that mountain and go to the coast. The pursuers might have bypassed the forest. We can't be sure even if it takes longer. Let's hurry." Zeke and his party traveled for a whole day, crossing the forest of monsters and heading towards the southern coast. Fortunately, there were no more pursuers sent by the Special Forces as they crossed the mountain and escaped. The sea came into view. "Boss, this way." Zeke and his party moved towards the southern coast where the smuggling ships docked. The southern part of the Dorda Republic was close to the Sea of Death, with rough waves and a basalt terrain, so people rarely approached it because of these geographical conditions. Smugglers from the southern continent used it as a base when entering the Dorda Republic. The safer route was through the north of the kingdom, but considering the situation, they had no choice but to choose the south, Zeke said. To Boris, "Do smuggling ships always dock there?" Most of the smugglers who use the southern route bring in drugs. Since there is a high demand for soma in the casino city, small smuggling ships are constantly coming and going. "I see, but will they willingly take us to the southern continent? If you tell them you're from the syndicate, they won't be able to refuse." The syndicate, which controlled the southern cartel, was not something that small-time smugglers could handle. Zeke nodded in understanding at Boris's words. Zeke and his party passed through the basalt terrain and headed towards the cave where the smugglers had set up camp. As they almost arrived, they heard the sound of fighting from inside the cave. Clang. Crash. Zeke raised his hand and signaled them to retreat. "It seems they've found the smuggling ship dock." Boris gritted his teeth at the enemy's persistence. If they couldn't board a smuggling ship here, it would be difficult to find an escape route. "Boris, protect His Highness. I'll go check it out." Zeke used his concealment skill and slowly approached the basalt cave where the battle was taking place. Looking inside, he was surprised to see Draker Knights fighting with smugglers. Those are the Red Lion Knights. As Zeke expected, it seemed to be the pursuers who had bypassed the coast and chased after them. Fortunately, Abel and William were nowhere to be seen. Just then, someone from the Red Lion Knights shouted, "Catch all those bastards." As the knights charged into the cave, the smugglers hid behind the cover they had set up inside and shot crossbows and military magic bombs at the knights. Crash. Although they were Draker Knights with skills above Purple Knight level, the power of the magic bombs was considerable and they could be seriously injured if they were careless. The knights, who had underestimated the smugglers, were caught off guard by the unexpected counterattack. The smugglers' defense, armed with military magic weapons circulating among the southern cartel, was stronger than expected. "I need to divert the Red Lion Knights' attention and create an opening." Zeke, observing the situation, took out the explosive magic scrolls he had purchased from the shop from his inventory and started moving stealthily and quickly. Meanwhile, Donner Repelt, one of the lieutenants of the Red Lion Knights leading the knights, had an annoyed expression. "Damn it, can't you even handle those bastards?" The Red Lion Knights were composed of young knights who followed Abel. Most of them had mainly hunted outlaws in the central continent or massacred poorly armed rebels, so they lacked combat experience in chaotic battles in narrow spaces like this. Donner was annoyed that his subordinates couldn't sweep away the enemies as smoothly as usual. He raised his sword and shouted, "Get out of the way. I'll go in and sweep them all away." But just then, something flew from behind. Crash. It wasn't the sound of military magic bombs thrown by the smugglers, but the explosion of real magic. Chapter 94. Damn it, it's magic. Dodge. Crash. In reality, it was just the explosion magic scroll that Zeke had detonated, but Donner mistook it for real magic due to its power. A mage. Find the mage. The knights, caught off guard by the sudden magic attack from the rear, retreated and searched for the mage who had attacked them, but that was a wrong choice. Zeke had already set up explosion scrolls in places they were likely to dodge to. Crash. The hidden scrolls detonated, causing explosions. Ugh. If it had been other knights, they would have been wiped out by this explosion, but these were Draker Knights. They quickly protected themselves with aura and rolled to places where the explosion wouldn't reach them. The Draker Knight uniforms, which effectively blocked magic, also played a role in protecting them. Donner drew his sword and shouted, "Damn it, who is it?" A tremendous gust of wind blew towards the knights who were disoriented by the continuous explosions. Donner shouted at the sight of the gust, "Dodge!" Some knights jumped into the sea, and some rolled and hid behind rocks. The gust of wind that Zeke created swept through the surroundings, obscuring their vision. Meanwhile, Zeke, using his concealment skill, crept up behind the knights hiding behind the rocks and slit their throats. Cough. Even Draker knights were helpless as he covered their mouths and stabbed them in their vital points in a single blow. As the gust subsided, Donner, the lieutenant, finally regained his senses and tried to gather his subordinates, but when he looked around, all his subordinates were already dead and collapsed. How? Just then, someone stood behind Donner. He felt the sharp touch of a dagger against his neck. "Where's Abel?" Donner stealthily looked around, trying to find an opening to swing his sword. Slash. Zeke cut off Donner's arm with the sword he was holding in his other hand. Kayak. Zeke held up Donner's severed arm and asked again, "I'll give you a potion if you answer now. The faster you answer, the higher the chance it will reattach." Donner gasped, clutching his severed arm. A knight with a severed arm was worthless. His lips trembled as he spoke. The commander is at the terminal. Slash. Zeke cut off Donner's head before he could finish his sentence. He had no intention of letting him live in the first place. Zeke signaled to Boris, who was hiding, while Zeke protected Karuz. Boris was to enter the cave and negotiate with the smugglers. A moment later, Boris came out with a few armed smugglers. The wary smugglers came out of the cave with their weapons drawn. Zeke asked the smuggler, who seemed to be the leader in the southern language, "Do you have a ship? We need to go to the southern continent right now. We'll pay you." The smuggler replied to Zeke, "You saved our lives, so no payment is necessary. However, it's difficult to set sail right now." "Is there a storm coming?" The smuggler shook his head. "It's because the big one comes out when the weather is like this." Boris, who was next to him, added, "He means a sea monster appears." Zeke said to the smuggler, "If a sea monster appears, I'll take care of it, so don't worry and set sail." The smugglers whispered among themselves, then they soon nodded. "A southerner repays a favor even if it costs them their life. We'll set sail, but we can't guarantee your arrival." "Okay." The smugglers went back into the cave. Then, surprisingly, they laid rails all the way to the coast and pulled the ship out from inside the cave. The ship soon floated on the sea, and Zeke boarded it with Karuz. Zeke first checked the ship for any other traps with his dragon eye, but fortunately there were no hidden assassins or explosive devices. "Please rest here for a while." Surprisingly, Karuz had kept up well with Zeke and Boris's forced march. He was given potions whenever his stamina dropped, but he was better than most soldiers. Zeke asked Karuz, "Your Highness, have you received military training before?" Karuz nodded at the question. "Yes, I received field training. How did you know?" Those who only received night training often have a hard time enduring marches or field situations. Karuz nodded in agreement. "There are such guys among the dandy noble knights, but I served my full 3-year term and was honorably discharged." Zeke was even more surprised by Karuz's words. "You mean you responded to the conscription even though you're royalty?" The Rom Empire had adopted a conscription system. All young men and women had to serve in the military for 3 years. However, most nobles avoided their military service with various excuses. The same went for the royal family. As a result, it became quite natural for royalty and nobles not to join the military. Under such circumstances, it was naturally surprising that Prince Karuz, who had the right to inherit the throne, had completed his military service as an active soldier. "Is it strange that I'm a reservist? It's unexpected. I thought you only liked alcohol and gambling." "That's quite a rude remark, but I'll let it slide since you saved my life. Sir Zeke, I am an artist, and artists should know how to enjoy life, but they should also have various experiences." Wasn't Paris, the famous minstrel of the Holy Empire, a legendary bard, an excellent soldier, and a swordsman representing his era? Zeke was a little impressed by Karuz's unexpected side. In his past life, he had been involved in several rescue missions, and each time, dealing with immature nobles was more difficult than facing 10 knights. While talking about various things with Karuz, "The preparations were finished, boss. They say we're departing now." "Okay, Boris, you can rest now." Soon, the ship set sail, and the Dorda Republic gradually became distant. Just then, the captain of the smuggler ship approached Zeke. "With this wind, it will take about 10 days. However, as I said before, I can't guarantee that we'll arrive safely in the southern continent." "Is it because of the sea monster you mentioned?" "That, and it's difficult to predict how the pirates will act if it's not the designated day and time." "Pirates?" I heard that the favela cartel was disbanded and scattered. The captain shook his head. They abandoned their honor as pirates and went ashore, so we don't consider them pirates anymore. So you mean there are other pirates besides them? Yes, there are fearsome pirates operating around the Sea of Death. We usually pay tolls to come and go, but if we're unlucky, we become fish food. In short, it meant that it was up to the pirates. Zeke nodded. Okay, if we encounter pirates, I'll deal with them. The captain bowed his head and went back to the deck. He was worried that Abel's side might chase them by ship, but fortunately there were no ships in pursuit. I hope Mr. Paynon arrived safely. I have to hope Muhammad did his job properly. Zeke sat in the cabin and opened his status window for the first time in a while to check his current stats. Intermediate Administrator status window name, Zeke Draca class. Immortal unique titles, blessed by the ancient dragon, heir of Tarek and Draker. Inheritor of the sword's saint abilities, dragon control, decay constitution, divine body, poison immunity system functions. Inventory 100 slots minimap portal movement intermediate questbook skill shortcut slot potion quick slot passive. Skills, healing factor steadfast mental defense infinite stamina combat senses special skills, gale force A-grade skilled elemental sword S-grade skilled true dragon sword art S-grade skilled active skills. Precise stab E-grade expert continuous / D rank beginner lightning A-grade beginner electrocution A-grade flash bang C-grade skilled discord C-grade skilled mana reflection A-grade beginner area of effect buff A-grade beginner concealment A-grade beginner curse reflection A-grade beginner draconian skills second stage unlocked. Dragon Eyes Expert Dragon's Majesty Expert Gluttony Expert Dragon Speech Locked Dragon Scale Armor Expert Dragon Claws Expert Karma Points 2,410. I've grown a lot since I first saw this. Zeke checked the information on the newly acquired ability Decay. Ability information Decay can cause anything that comes into contact with it to decay. Anything can be decayed. Since it was an ability he couldn't quite grasp yet, he decided to slowly learn about the decay ability. Zeke looked at the over 2,000 karma points with a satisfied expression. Next, Zeke opened the 3 random boxes he had received. Upper body armor information description. Upper body armor made using sturdy and lightweight wood steel unique ability. None special note. Unique ability activates when the full wood steel set is equipped. Helmet information description. Helmet made using sturdy and lightweight wood steel unique ability. None special note. Unique ability activates when the full wood steel set is equipped. Long sword information description. Long sword made using sturdy and lightweight wood steel unique ability. None special note. Unique ability activates when the full wood steel set is equipped. All 3 were equipment made of wood steel. The gauntlets, boots, and lower body armor I got before were also made of wood steel. Just then, a message window popped up. The full wood steel set has been assembled. When equipped with the full wood steel set, the unique ability Magic Shield will automatically activate. Magic Shield? Does that mean a barrier will be formed automatically? It's lucky that I got the full set right away. Zeke immediately equipped the full wood steel armor set. Since the wood steel armor itself was tightly woven like cloth rather than plate mail, it was very comfortable to move in. Good. I'll use this when I need to hide my identity and move around. During the voyage, Zeke taught Karu's basic survival skills on the ship, perhaps because he had received knight and military training. He followed along better than expected. Zeke mainly taught Karu's how to use a crossbow and a shield. Other knights only focus on sword training, but Sir Zeke is different. Those idiots are the ones who usually get hit by arrows and die. Karu's nodded at Zeke's firm words. In reality, the most threatening thing to knights in battle was a sudden arrow. If he could maintain his aura at all times, arrows wouldn't be a threat at all, but when exhausted, even a single arrow could be fatal. This was the reason why, even though the armor gradually became lighter after being promoted to Purple Knight, they still covered vital points, perhaps because his life depended on it. Karu's diligently learned survival skills. It was possible. Because they were having a fairly leisurely voyage since the Empire's warships weren't chasing them. But soon, a problem arose. On the 3rd day, the sea suddenly became rough. What's happening? The smugglers shouted in a panic. Take the big one. The big one is coming. It seemed the sea monster they were worried about before they left was approaching. Zeke drew Bahamut and looked out at the sea. But despite the rough waves, nothing was visible in his past life. He had encountered sea monsters a few times, but back then, he lured the monsters to land and hunted them using various equipment. Despite being in a more difficult situation than before, Zeke calmly took out the whale's breath. He had purchased in advance from his inventory and drank it. Thanks to this, he could now breathe even if he fell into the sea. That was when it happened. Rumble. A huge sound echoed from the bottom of the sea. The sailors started praying in fear. Just then, something approached from under the sea. Crash. A powerful wave struck the side of the ship. The smuggling ship rocked violently, almost capsizing. Zeke shouted to Boris, "Take His Highness inside." Boris immediately took Karuz to the inner cabin, and after confirming this, Zeke drew his sword and swung it at the wave. Crash. The wave shattered from Zeke's sword strike, but another wave surged in. At the same time, a giant monster appeared within the wave. Rumble, rumble, rumble. A colossal kraken stretched out its tentacles, attempting to ensnare the ship. Its size was so massive that each sucker was the size of a human. As the terrified sailors froze in place and began to pray, Zeke shouted, "Get inside the cabin, now!" Simultaneously, Zeke swung his sword at the kraken's tentacle. Slash. As he severed the tentacle with the dragon slayer art, the colossal kraken roared and retreated. Cry. Along with a long cry, more tentacles attacked the ship. Zeke realized he had no chance of winning while on the ship. He hesitated for a moment, then shouted towards the sea, "Nawel!" The subjugated dragonkin responded to Zeke's call. A giant magic circle appeared on the sea, and Nawel was summoned from within. Rumbling. Nawel let out the same mystical cry as when Zeke saw him at the lake. Zeke immediately jumped onto Nawel's back. He held onto Nawel's neck and raised Bahamut. "Nawel, let's go catch that damn squid." Rumbling. As the monster cry echoed, Zeke felt his mind relax, seeing Zeke riding the mystical beast. The kraken's tentacles surged towards him. The colossal tentacles, looking like towers, attacked Zeke. Chapter 95. Crash. As the colossal kraken slammed its tentacles down, a tsunami-like wave surged. The wave seemed to be about to swallow the ship whole. Zeke, riding on Nawel's back, pointed his sword at the wave. Wung. The sword vibrated intensely. Zeke held his sword horizontally and unleashed the secret technique of the True Dragon Sword Art. True Dragon Sword Art secret technique. Trijunction form. Great rock, rising from the water. The trijunction form, which had split Helen's sword strike, was now unleashed towards the tsunami. Crash. Zeke's sword split the giant wave horizontally. The tsunami, which had soared like a mountain, shattered into pieces. The smugglers on the deck, witnessing this scene, were awestruck by Zeke's feat of fighting the colossal kraken and shattering the tsunami. "Oh my God! He's the sea god! The sea god incarnate!" Most Southerners were followers of the sun god religion that spread from the central continent, but many sailors still worshipped the ancient indigenous sea god. Zeke, riding a sea dragon and defeating a giant monster, looked every bit like the legendary sea god. The colossal kraken, bewildered as Zeke split the tsunami it had created with his sword, started flailing its thick tentacles in confusion. This created a massive whirlpool in the sea. Nawel, carrying Zeke, tried to escape the whirlpool by swimming through the current. Rumbling. At the same time, Nawel roared, and the rough sea gradually calmed down. It seemed to be controlling the flow of the sea with its unique ability as a monster. Then, giant water bubbles floated around Nawel's body. Whoosh. The water bubbles, seemingly created by Nawel, flew towards the colossal kraken and clung to it. After attaching to the kraken, the water bubbles gradually grew in size. This prevented the kraken from moving the tentacles with the bubbles attached. Zeke shouted to Nawel, "Well done, Nawel. Hold it tight." Rumbling. As if answering Zeke, Nawel raised its head and cried out. Zeke used the power of wind to lift his body and leaped over the sea. Splash. At the same time, Zeke concentrated the power of wind into his sword. Wung. The power of the storm raged at the tip of Zeke's sword. The power of the wind, capable of creating a huge gust, was compressed and compressed, forming a hard sphere. The colossal kraken was still unable to move due to the water bubbles created by Noel. Zeke aimed the tip of his sword at the kraken and shouted, "Elemental sword, wind chapter storm orb." The orb of the storm at the tip of his sword shot towards the kraken. Crash. The storm orb, creating a huge splash of water, shot towards the kraken's head. The moment the orb touched the monster's body, the compressed power within exploded. Crash. A huge gust of wind erupted, engulfing the kraken's entire body. Boom. The colossal kraken's body was torn to shreds. Half of the kraken's body was blown away by the explosion of the storm orb, leaving it tattered. Cryera. The colossal kraken, seemingly realizing it couldn't defeat Zeke, let out a monstrous cry and tried to escape back into the sea. However, Zeke took the stance of the Dragon Slayer art towards the kraken, trying to flee into the sea. Dragon Slayer art. True dragon sword art. Full moon / Zeke's sword drew a giant full moon. The full moon, made of aura, floated on the surface of the sea and cut through the kraken's body and tentacles. Crash. The kraken, its tentacles all cut off by the full moon, floated on the sea, tattered. Just then, a message popped up before Zeke's eyes. You have slain a menacing ancient sea creature. You have earned 300 karma points. Experience points are automatically distributed to the summoned beast Noel. When a certain number of points are accumulated, the monster Noel will evolve into a divine beast. Noel will evolve if it receives points. Could summoned beasts also receive points? This was something he hadn't expected. He had thought karma points were only for him. If it works for Noel, can I use it for other summoned beasts as well? Perhaps even for Bahamut, which is a growth-type item? Bahamut, a growth-type weapon, currently had most of its power sealed. He didn't know how to make it grow, so he just left it as it was. But if he could use karma points to grow items, it seemed like it wouldn't take as long as he thought to unlock Bahamut's sealed power. I've learned something good. Zeke sent Noel back to its original lake and climbed back onto the ship. But then, the smugglers suddenly started bowing to Zeke. What are you doing all of a sudden? Boris, who came out of the cabin, answered instead. They seem to think you're the sea god incarnate after seeing you defeat the kraken. Zeke chuckled at those words. If I were the real sea god, that kind of monster wouldn't have appeared in the first place. Regardless of what Zeke thought, the smugglers treated him like a god and worshipped him. Since it wasn't particularly uncomfortable, Zeke decided to just let it be. As they were about to set sail on the calm sea again, Zeke noticed the smugglers tying one of the kraken's tentacles, which was floating on the sea, to the ship with a rope. Why are you taking that? The smugglers replied with excited expressions at Zeke's question. The meat of the big one sells for a very high price, and it's also a source of pride. It tastes good too. It seemed that the colossal kraken wasn't a monster corrupted by magic, so there was no problem eating it. When he tried the kraken roast that the smugglers brought, it was indeed much more chewy and flavorful than ordinary squid. Just in case, he tried eating another kraken tentacle with gluttony, but unlike monsters or other ancient species, he didn't acquire any separate bloodline abilities. I'll just have to be satisfied with the delicious taste. With the kraken tentacle hanging from the ship, they crossed the center of the Sea of Death. The captain of the smuggling ship said to Zeke, "We'll have to stay on the island tonight, replenish our water and food, and depart tomorrow." As Zeke nodded, the captain turned the ship towards the island. The ship reached the island in the evening, and Zeke and his party were able to set foot on land for the first time in days. The smugglers skillfully docked the ship and unloaded the water tanks and boxes for loading food. Zeke asked the captain, "It looks like an uninhabited island. Is there a place to replenish supplies?" "Yes. This is an island that all ships traveling through the Sea of Death stop at. Even pirates don't plunder here and just quietly exchange water and food." It seemed there was a code of conduct among seafarers. After the explanation, the captain took a few smugglers and went to procure supplies. Zeke was taking out camping equipment from his inventory and preparing a camp to spend the night. That was when it happened. The smugglers who remained on the ship shouted, "Pirates! Pirates!" A dozen pirate ships appeared in the distance. Zeke, who was contemplating how to apply karma points to Bahamut, got up at the smugglers' shouts. Boris approached Zeke and said, "Boss, we have a problem." "The pirates?" The captain said this island was a neutral zone without conflict. "It usually is. But those pirates are notorious for their ruthlessness. The ship in the middle is the captain's ship." "You mean the leader of the pirate forces?" "Yes. The captain leading them is a pirate named Hook, and he's currently called the man closest to the Pirate King." Zeke's expression hardened at the mention of the Pirate King. Pirate King. Hook's pirate ship soon reached the shore. Then, dozens of pirates boarded a small boat and approached the coast. The pirates who appeared all had ferocious looks and rough scars and tattoos all over their bodies. Even among these intimidating pirates, there was one man who particularly stood out. "It feels damn good to step on land after a long time." He was a man with a large build that seemed to be over 2 meters tall and a distinctive hook-shaped beard. He was the infamous pirate of the Sea of Death. Captain Hook and his pirates spotted the smuggling ship and Zeke's group on the coast. Hook stroked his beard and grinned. "Who the hell are these guys? Smugglers? Kids? And even a landlubber mixed in." As Captain Hook spoke in a threatening voice, Boris stepped forward. "Captain Hook, I've heard a lot about your reputation. We're on a mission for the syndicate. I'd appreciate it if we could each take care of our business quietly and leave." Hook and the other pirates burst into laughter at Boris's words. "Wahahaha! Take care of our business quietly and leave? What a load of Central Continent crap. You think we just back down because you're with the syndicate?" Boris's expression hardened at Captain Hook's words. It seemed the rough pirates had no intention of letting them go quietly. Just then, Zeke, who was watching, stepped forward. He said in a low voice, "We don't want to see any bloodshed." Hook's smiling expression changed instantly at Zeke's sharp voice. He felt an unusual aura emanating from Zeke, whom he had thought was just a young kid. One of the pirates next to Hook raised his weapon and stepped forward. "You arrogant brat? Who do you think you're talking to? Did you get some night training somewhere?" Then, he swung his giant axe at Zeke. Zeke didn't dodge the axe falling towards his head and caught it with his bare hands. Crush! Not only did he catch it, but he also crushed the iron blade of the axe. Huh! The pirate who swung the axe was startled and stepped back. Seeing this, all the pirates drew their weapons and assumed a fighting stance. Captain Hook raised his hand to stop his subordinates. He spoke to Zeke. "You're no ordinary knight. Are you really with the syndicate? I can show you my membership card if you want." "What the hell would we know by looking at a damn syndicate card? So, little brother, what will you do if you don't want to see any bloodshed?" Zeke looked at Hook and said, "I'll have the opportunity to treat the renowned Captain Hook to some fine liquor." Hook looked blankly at those words. Then, he burst into hearty laughter. "Damn it! Hell yeah! Put your weapons down, boys. I'm going to have a good drink with this cheeky little brother today." At Captain Hook's words, the pirates lowered their weapons. The atmosphere changed instantly. Hook approached Zeke. "Little brother, let's make a proper introduction. My name is James Hook. As you know, I'm better known as Hook." "Nice to meet you, James. I'm Zeke Murray." "Murray, huh? It's a name I'm hearing for the first time, but it seems like you'll be shaking things up soon. Thank you for the generous assessment. If you'd like, would you like a drink here? I have some Kraken roast and hidden whiskey, though it's nothing fancy." At those words, Hook laughed heartily and moved to Zeke's camp without hesitation. Boris made a fire and roasted the Kraken tentacles. And Zeke took out the whiskey the smugglers had and offered it to Hook. "Phew! This is some good whiskey. Central Continent guys sure know how to make whiskey." Zeke poured more whiskey into Hook's glass and asked, "Why has the great pirate who shakes the Sea of Death come all the way here? I heard this place is mainly used by smugglers." Hook drank the whiskey in one gulp and said, "It's all because of those damn merfolk." "Merfolk?" "Yeah, a while ago those merfolk started acting like pirates in groups, and their forces have grown quite large. I wondered why those clam-eating bastards were suddenly acting like that, and it turned out some guy was instigating them. Damn it." "You mean there's someone who's rallying the merfolk into pirates?" Hook nodded as he took another sip of whiskey. Yeah. Hey, little brother, have you ever heard of Treasure Island? This is the first time I'm hearing about Treasure Island. It's a famous story among us pirates. Captain Kidd, the legendary pirate, hid all the treasure he collected throughout his life on an island somewhere in the Sea of Death. I didn't know there was such a legend. Little brother. That's not all. There's a legend that whoever finds Captain Kidd's treasure island becomes the Pirate King. Zeke's eyebrows twitched again at the mention of the Pirate King. Pirate King. If I remember correctly, the name of the Pirate King who drove Sister Callie to her death wasn't Hook, that guy was. Hook chewed on the roasted kraken tentacles and shouted, that damn Peter Pan is after that treasure island. How dare he, while I, the great Captain Hook, am still alive.